Many of you are aware of what it's like to be mature in the feminist era. In spite of all of American history and all of our biblical studies, there is no thinking human being these days who will stand up and argue that a woman's brain, a woman's intellect, and a woman's skill is not equal to a man's. Even as society is finding its voice to argue for equal pay for equal work, regardless of sex, an achievement that many women still have not achieved, the arguments against such perspective are increasingly archaic. You have to think of biblical Martha as the head of her household. She has a sister, but the scriptures have told us that Martha's sister Mary was not the type to take up tasks and make the household run. She left that to Martha, and so Martha did the task. You can see Martha going to the market, shopping for food for the family, preparing it, and making sure that the roof over their head stays secure, while Mary followed Martha's lead. Perhaps Martha had been married before and came back home widowed, and truth to tell, she had to know about managing things and people, because most likely when Jesus came to visit, he had all of the disciples with him. That was a lot of bodies to house. That was a lot of mouths to feed. Was there a man residing in the household? By Hebrew law, there had to be. The man was Mary and Martha's brother, Lazarus. The three of them were Jesus' close friends. But from what we can tell of Lazarus, he was not the healthiest of men. In the Gospel of John, we read of Lazarus suddenly taking ill, and Jesus, knowing of the ongoing malady of his friend, said, if he rests, he should get well. But just the opposite happened. When Jesus got to Mary and Martha's village, Lazarus had not gotten well. In fact, he had been dead for 4 days, and in true Jewish custom, they had quickly buried him. And it was Martha who spoke up to Jesus. She said, Lord, we sent word that Lazarus was sick. And then further she said, Lord, if you had come, he would not have died. Yes, in life and in death, Martha was large and in charge. She took care of things. She made the wheels roll. She made the household function. In that age where there was no feminism, no female equality, Lazarus' presence was the only thing that gave Mary and Martha their respectability. Women could not own property. So I'm sure it was a great emotional gift when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. But I suspect it was an economic relief too. Lazarus and Mary and Martha could still function in their home. They would not be turned out into the streets. And who would be in charge? Who would still pursue the art of the deal? Who would still win? Why, Martha, of course. Good for Martha. Good for them all. I want you to be clear. I admire Martha. I admire the fact that she looked at the reality of the situation, the reality of her brother, and the reality of her sister, and she got things done. There is a saying that goes around, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. But Martha had gotten to the place, and I'm talking about biblical Martha here. Martha had gotten to the place where she defined herself by her responsibility. That is totally who she was. With regard to her brother, Martha was a caretaker. With regard to her sister, Martha was probably the oldest sister. Martha was the head of the house. And Martha needed somebody to thank her for her selfless service. Martha needed somebody to say, "Atta girl, Martha, you do so much for other people. You are so special because you have given your life to care for other people." Oh, what a martyr you are, Martha. An angel right here on earth, Martha. Martha was consumed by her task. She thought her task and the importance of her task made her irreplaceable. Do you know anybody like that? I do. All of us. And I suspect that Jesus loved and respected Martha too. So much so that when she came to him saying, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all this work by myself? Tell her then to help me. The Lord answered her by gently calling her name twice, as in, there. Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. In that gentle redirection of his friend, we find ourselves. You and I are worried and distracted by so many things. How are all of the details for the wedding going to come together by next July? Who's going to make sure that the social hall is clean for the next event? Who's going to set up all of the microphones and the piano and the lights for the next open mic night? But a lot goes into getting things done, doesn't it? And so often we are frustrated by the world in which we live, especially right now, by what we can and can't control, and there's very little that we can control, that we turn to defining ourselves by the things that we think we still do well. I can get that, I can fix that, I can do that. I am the person who has always been in charge of this or that. And it's almost as if we have this little voice in our head saying, if I can just continue to do the same thing, if I can just be in charge, day in and day out, year after year, we can avoid all of this chaos and even stop time. The people who organized the Dallas Peace March that ended so tragically with the taking of the 5 officers' lives, they were themselves carrying automatic assault weapons at a peace rally. Guns at a peace rally. They were distracted. Right now, there is a state in our 21st century union that is lobbying to dismantle the cameras on police cars so that there will no longer be a video of what transpires between police and the people they stop. The reasoning of that particular state's governor is that the police are the authority. Their word should always be trusted and unquestioned. In this time where American culture and race clashes are once again making international headlines all around the world, and distrust is at an all-time high, this governor wants the authority of one side to predominate. He thinks that will solve all of the state's problems. This governor is distracted. I suspect that biblical Martha did not want Mary to help her. Martha wanted Mary to do what she thought was right. If Jesus had turned to Mary and said, Mary, do you see how your sister is doing so much for all of us, making us comfortable, serving us food? Go to her, apologize for being so lazy, and ask her how you can be of help to her. Martha would have been in 7th heaven. Not only would she have been affirmed for all of the things that she did, she would have somebody to boss around now and forevermore. A sister who was always her assistant. A sister who had been set right by the Lord of hosts. Talk about thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven for Martha. Wow. So many of us think that if, number one, the rest of our families, the rest of our neighbors, the rest of America, and the rest of the world could just understand doing good the way that we understand it, any situation that we encounter could be straightened out, and even more, we would be right. But here is the sobering truth. Ours, yours and mine, is not the only lens. The world does not look through just our perspective, just through our eyes. Girls and boys who mature early and grow big and strong and excel at dance and sports do not experience life by children who mature later, or children who are differently able. Girls and boys who have what society defines as classically good looks and winning personalities do not encounter the challenges of society the way that other kids do. Girls and boys who discover early on that they have great gifts and talents that will define their careers and livelihoods, gifts that are prized by society, do not have the same sense of unworthiness perhaps in society as other kids do. The list is endless. What about the survivors of abuse of all kinds? People living with chronic illnesses, in pain every day and night of their lives. What about the profoundly poor? 1 in 8 children going to bed hungry every night. To think that yours is the only way to handle all problems is to be distracted, like Martha. To think that way makes us all biblical Marthas. The president said black lives do matter. And in the next breath said that the great majority of police, in spite of the mistakes and bad judgment of a few, need to be respected and protected. How are these two perspectives reconciled in this day and age? No matter who we are and how much good we think we are accomplishing, for which we need to be thanked, we, like Mary, must first choose prayer and contemplation at the feet of Jesus before we take any action. Theologian Douglas John Hall, working with the World Council of Churches, says that peace does not come without justice. And justice does not come without the integrity of creation, which is the very integrity of God. All that God made is good. Therefore, it must be respected, encountered, and lived with on its own terms. Let me say that again. All that God made is good. Therefore, it must be respected, encountered, and lived with on its own terms. None of us is any better than any other. As horrified as what we have seen going on, what we continue to see going on in the world, you and I both know in our own heart of hearts that we have cursed and killed just like the next person. We are called on now more than ever to do our best. If something does not go the way you intended it, you give God praise and move on and wait to see the greater blessing perhaps in a community that might feel disjointed but nevertheless stays together. We are not to rush around inflicting our well-meaning but ultimately controlling agenda on anything or anybody. Look at our world. Doing that has brought terrible repercussions. You and I can only contemplate God's will as brought near to us through Jesus Christ in everything, and then see how we can work together through our half-formed thoughts, our me-centered opinions, and our entitlement issues, to see how God can one more time work through us to make this a world for everyone.